Firstly, congratulations.
Thank you.
On A Stitch in Time, which is Sasha.
Yeah.
A debut movie for you.
Yes.
And Don McAlpine, I understand this is your first movie as a cinematographer as well.
I think he's got that career.
First of this style.
Well, I was having nightmares that joke wasn't going to work, so thank you for laughing. But seriously, what was a first-time experience for you on this movie?
What was the first time?
What was something that you were doing for the first time on this movie?
Have wraps for lunch every meal. That was the most notable thing. Most notable thing was that we probably had a smaller crew than I've ever worked with, and it was very, very effective. I've always maintained that efficiency diminishes as the crew increases, and this actually proved it to be absolutely true. Yeah.
So small the crew.
But the big movies go slowly.
Right.
Yeah.
And can you just tell me, before we get on to the film itself, how does a first-time feature film director nab a world-class, internationally renowned cinematographer to work on his first movie? This doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, we've been friends for a very long time, and I think I approached you with a script some time ago, but there was always this idea that we would work together on something, and we just, I just created the opportunity, basically.
Doesn't Don McAlpine...
My take on that is, of course, Sasha and I got to know each other. He would turn up on locations in America, and I guess to a degree I mentored him in that situation, and the association and friendship grew over the years, and eventually I said to him, if you ever get the money, I'll shoot your movie. And we actually never got the money, but we shot the movie.
Just firstly, so what were you doing? You were doing what, internships on film productions with Don?
I was working on, years ago I was working on Super Mario Brothers, which Dean Selman was shooting.
Yes. And
Don and Dean were good friends, and some of the crew were going from Super Mario Brothers onto Man Without a Face, which Don was shooting. And I pretty much got invited because I became sort of fairly critical in the camera department on Super Mario Brothers. I started out as an intern, but I was just, found my spot that was kind of, then became necessary that I was there in the camera department. So when that crew was going on to Don's film in Nova Scotia, I was invited to go onto that. So it was. I remember meeting Don for the first time. I was in this tiny little aeroplane. I didn't think my bag was going to fit on the back seat, and landed on this paddock in the middle of nowhere. And you and Jeanette were there to greet me, and that's where we became friends. Anyway,
I don't remember any of that.
Just to quickly cover something that you mentioned there, which I was going to ask later on, but I may as well ask it now, about how you financed this film and what kind of release it's going to get.
I guess it's a rolling finance, in a sense that the theory was if we had a camera, a microphone, and an actor, we could make a movie, and it was all self-funded pretty much. There's a Steve Kosh, a gentleman in the UK, put up the funding for it. It was done pretty cheaply, in a sense, but we had the support of a lot of Panavision, Panasonic. There was a lot of groundswell based around the idea and what the film we wanted to make, why we wanted to make it, and also to the idea of making a film that in a sense was kind of like similar model to like a teaching hospital. You got to understand that in Australia, the ABC and Film Australia no longer have these training programs. And so I felt that it was also an opportunity to give back in some way and to mix masters and apprentices together. And the idea, being similar to a teaching hospital, is that it's not just about having fun, it's about making sure the patient doesn't die as well. So it was really, it's really, really critical that the film works and the film's successful for that true, I guess, full circle experience.
Don, what was the working relationship like? Because again, this is a very unusual pairing. Was it Jedi Master Padawan?
No.
Was it equal? Can you describe it to me?
No, I mean, Sasha was the writer and the director, and always the writer and the director. And it's my job to service his concept, and that's what I did. But it was truly interesting for me because I didn't have all the king's horses and all the king's men, and I really had to adapt to the new situation. But in actual fact, I've found that the freedom that this gave me, because I didn't have all these these toys to play with, was quite liberating. And I think in some ways the quality of the work I did on this film is a little bit exceptional, and it's certainly more intimate and personal than most projects I've worked on, and I truly enjoyed the process.
It's very interesting. So this was a fresh experience for you.
Actually, every movie is, but yes, this was fresh and liberating. And actually, I've carried that liberation forward to projects I've done since then. That I've sort of probably think far more simplistically about the process than the complexity I used to place on it earlier. It's a freedom.
What principle, what filmmaking value did you apply on this movie that is consistent with films throughout your career?
The old problem is tell the story and try to capture the essence of the script and the performance as best you can. In other words, follow the heat of the whole situation and try to get as much on the thing as you can. I mean, it's really interpreting with your camera what's happening out there.
It's servicing the story,
and
not the story servicing your style.
It's a totally gut feeling all the time on any movie. I mean, I have a script, I have a director, but you still got to look into what you feel this should be. And so far, that's sustained me.
In 1986, we did a phone interview about Down and Out in Beverly Hills.
Oh.
And I asked you the same question.
Oh.
And what you just said is almost word for word what you said in 1986.
I can add to that in that that's what's I love about working with Don, is that we're talking about story with everything. The key thing is story, and it's always about story. Every shot and everything is about why are we doing this, how does this serve the story. And I think if Don wasn't there, I would have over-engineered every scene to the point that I'm pretty sure I'd have done at least 2 setups per scene more if Don wasn't there, just over-engineering and shooting stuff that was unnecessary. And I think that having Don there is to kind of constantly check in on what are we saying, what are we doing, what's necessary in the flow of and the rhythm and the emotions of telling a story. It was just wonderful, just because that's the way I think, and it's just wonderful with Don. That's the way.
So Don, you were basically there going, you have it covered. We can move on from now. We don't have to do another setup.
Probably not as directly as that. Guiding all the time and realising that you're right. We did have enough shots to cut together to make it and in any more may or may not help.
Yeah, so I think sometimes you can have probably too much money and too much time, and you can just end up overcomplicating stuff that's not necessary. But I think, I mean, if we had all the money in the world, would we have done a lot things much different? I'm not sure.
I don't.
Catering might have been different.
Catering would have been better.
Congratulations, sincerely, on the film. I probably have a couple of quibbles about the levels of performance. Some performers were really good, some of them didn't quite match. I thought it was a very full-bodied, well-developed story. If you were to describe this movie to someone, they'd say, "Oh, what a sweet little movie." This isn't a sweet little movie, is it? This has some pretty salty things to say about friendships, about relationships, about dreams, and about the elderly.
I think that the human experience is an epic experience. Doesn't matter who you are. There's very challenging things that we're all confronted with. There's laughter and humour in life, and I like to think that my style is embraces community, embraces the human experience, and I think that laughter and tears is hand in hand in what I see life to be and what I like to put on the screen, I guess.
Well, the film comes at an interesting time when a lot of movies are refocusing on the lives of old people. There's been quite a few of them in the last 5 to 10 years. Up until then, old people in Western culture tend to be kind of marginalised. Don, I'm interested in your observation about how the film treats the elderly.
Well, a theory is, and I can't prove it, is that probably the audience going to cinema today are predominantly of that age group. So that may have something to do with it. But I think it's... and of course, we are becoming a much larger community within the society. That is the elderly, which is one of them. And that of course is a factor. So it's, I mean, it is a changing population all the time.
Sasha?
Yeah, I think
the focus on this issue.
I think I saw an opportunity to help steer our perception of the elderly, because I have been friends with Don for years and friends with Michael Kirby and a lot of older people that are have their full wits about them, that are doing amazing things all the time. I guess my experience and the, regular portrayal of the elderly being a burden is just not familiar for me, and so I just saw an opportunity to say something a bit different.
And just quickly, I understand that one of your inspirations was the Zhang Yimou film, The Road Home, which was one of his most humanist...
The Coming Home, yeah.
Sorry, what did I say?
I think it's Coming Home.
It's a beautiful film, one of his most humanist movies. That was an inspiration?
Yeah, it was. Tim and I were visiting our friend Craig Wood, who was editing Zhang Yimou's The Great Wall, and while we were there, we just thought we'd watch some of his films, and it really struck me his sense of community, and I liked that. I really connected with that, and I did have an idea that I was inspired by Bruce Beresford's Driving Miss Daisy, of just, and I like the idea of considering love in the context of a full life, and without physical beauty being the kind of symbol of that. And I think it was Zhang Yimou's film when we saw it over there that really ignited me to go back to that.
Yeah. I'm the one who complains about Australian films not having fully developed stories, and sometimes not even having a third act. I can't say that about this film because it feels to me that this film went into production after you had finessed the screenplay to the nth degree. It is a really well-developed, full-bodied story. Maybe you overused the music a little bit in some of the final scenes. Aside from that, it seemed a really well-honed screenplay. Can you tell me if that's the case? And if so, how long did it take for you to work all the air bubbles out of the narrative?
It was surprisingly quickly. It was surprisingly about 6 months. It did seem to come together surprisingly quickly, and I say that because I was really focusing only a couple of hours a day on it. There's probably about just dedicating 2 hours per day. In the meantime, I was telling everyone about it and getting everybody involved, and Don laughed at me because he said it was the first film he ever got involved with that had a camera agreement before a script. Yeah, I had a letter from Panasonic saying right up to the factory level in Japan, you have our full support and we'll do anything you want. And I'm telling people, well, the script will be ready soon. But I think one of the key things at this level was to lock in on that script, and it really hasn't changed much. The same scene numbers from the original screenplay was, in the final sound mix, we're referring to the same scene numbers pretty much.
Don, what was your response when you read the final screenplay?
I obviously liked it, but and of course, just to go back a bit. One of the big advantages of having a story about older people is there's a far wider pool of actors available, to be blunt. I don't think that was a consideration, but it was after the event, the fact we got really good people to cast.
And I just quickly need to ask you about the dialogue in the film. It is so engaging, the way the dialogue is sculpted. You have that wonderful technique of having characters push back on what the other character has just said. It's a very, very engrossing way to observe an exchange. Tell me a bit, where are you getting your cues from in terms of writing dialogue?
I identify a lot with Aaron Sorkin. He talks about dialogue being music, and I try and explain that to people that the dialogue's important, but it's not important, and it's really more like a musical instrument. And what the words themselves often don't matter so much as he sounds angry, and he's playing one note, and the other person's playing the note against that. It's just the human voice to me is like a musical instrument, and the sound of the dialogue is really important to me. And with regards to people pushing back, I mean the hero is as great as the villain is, in a sense. You want if it's too easy, it's not a heroic journey. So I really try and give my heroes a hard time.
The people are constantly challenging each other when they talk. And
it's complicated too. I mean, I think the idea of a bad guy and a good guy is, I mean, it's not. It's life's more complicated than that. It's not. And I like to. I don't think there's any. I have no fear in exploring that.
Are you ready for the Shembri Challenge? This is something that I put to every independent filmmaker. There's no right or wrong answer to this. This is a scenario I'd like to put to independent filmmakers. I'm a studio head. Don, I think you know what studio heads are like. And I've seen your little movie, and we love your film. And what we want to do is that we want to remake your film in America with an American cast. We want Don to shoot it, but we don't want you to direct it. We'll give you a deal that will give you a big release across the United States. What do you say to that deal?
Show me the money.
For me, I wouldn't do it. I don't have to. I don't have to do. I don't work for money anymore. But thank God, I'm been very lucky. So the point is, I wouldn't take on a project like that. Finish.
Okay. Sasha?
I think you got to explore options. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what does that mean?
Okay, we can't get Don, but we'll get another top-line cinematographer to shoot it. But we're going to get an American director and an American cast. You can stay on as a consultant, but we don't want you to direct it. What would you say to a deal?
I won't have time to stay on a consultant because we'll be taking the money and making another one. So,
so you'd consider a deal like that?
I think you got to consider anything. I think it's an important story, and if I think this would work, but if there's an opportunity for it to be expressed in another way, why not? Let's see.
Yeah, I wouldn't resent them doing it. I just wouldn't do it because.
Don, that was too big a bait to dangle in front of me without me jumping on it. No. You said you don't work for the money anymore. Just firstly, can you tell me what this phase of your life is like, that you're in that position, and when did you stop working for the money?
Well, I managed to step into what I call the last days of Hollywood, where the plane landed at LAX and the rep came up to first class and led you out to the limo, which is the bottom of the stairs. I mean, it doesn't happen anymore. And you were paid accordingly. I was paid outrageous amounts of money and given lots of money to live on, and one day I woke up and I was quite wealthy. And but that's not affected my approach to work. I do it because I enjoy it, and it gives me the ability now to sit around and wait to find things that really are interesting, or at worst case scenario will just let me keep practicing them out until something interesting comes along. But I'm working with Jeff Walker occasionally now, and that's the best work around, and I'm happy to be offered it and do it.
You've seen how directors work. You must have so much exposure. You've never really directed a film yourself. What's the reason for that?
It's not true. I have directed a documentary.
I meant a feature film.
No.
Yeah.
I've been offered probably 3 times. There've been terrible scripts that nobody else wanted to direct. But that wasn't the reason I reject them. I reject them on the grounds that I probably would be maybe near as good as half the directors I've worked with, but I'm nowhere near that second group who really, like Sasha, contribute an amazing amount to the production, and I'm much happier serving them than being sort of a second line, which I'd always be director. I mean, I'd be a good functional director, never truly creative in the way I think these other people are.
So many Australian cinematographers have made huge imprints in Hollywood. There are some great Hollywood American cinematographers. What is it about Australian cinematographers that American directors love so much that they'll come to you instead of using their own guys?
It's at the initial stage, I think we hadn't come out of the studio system, which sort of promoted a degree of rigidity in the thinking of all crew members, and we hit the scene with no preconceived rules or ideas, and they liked the result. I think that was probably it. But I mean, now of course it's just open slather in the world. The best people are getting the work, and the work here in Australia is as good as anywhere, and it's just a world market. You'll find French cinematographers, Czech cinematographers. They're from everywhere. In other words, and of course that's Hollywood is almost vanishing in that real sense of the word. So yes. But
that when you talk about you, Johnny Seal, Dean Semler, and they at that time they had such an amazing training ground at the ABC and Film Australia, and that's really not here anymore. And I think that's part of the reason why I thought this would be good to try and...
Yeah, I mean, and of course, I've never been to a film school as a student. I've attended a fair few as a lecturer. I don't know how much better that is than on the job training.
Okay. We'll be on.
And you're quite comfortable with video.
Thanks.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me why you love video in this era when a lot of major film directors are demanding film. We want to shoot on film. You're quite comfortable with video. Tell us why.
The reason I love the digital medium is it's precise, it's exact, and it's immediate. I'm working directly to an image, not to tomorrow's laboratory production. Okay? Thanks.